Welcome to Mentoring Unlocked, hosted by Maud Lindley, founder of Serendis Leadership and MentorKey, the platform making mentoring impactful and elevating workplace development conversations. Maud is a renowned executive coach and leadership strategist with over 2 decades of experience, helping leaders unlock their full potential through adaptive leadership and meaningful mentoring. Tune in for personal mentoring stories, expert insights, practical tools, and bold conversations. Whether you're a mentor, mentee, or a culture shaper, there's something for you.
Alex Richardson, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mentoring Unlocked podcast. I was so excited as we have had so many conversations about mentoring and tech and organizational mentoring, I thought this was going to be the best conversation together to broadcast to our audience. I'm really excited to learning a little bit more about you as well. So let me do a quick intro first before
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. Alex, you were a co-founder of Art of Mentoring, which was one of the avant-garde mentoring platforms back in the days, like several years ago. You exited that business now several years ago, and you've been showing your passion for mentoring and tech and HR tech ever since, working with various different organizations and recently joining the advisory board for MentorKey. Thank you so much for being here and for joining us at MentorKey.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for the future. And yeah, the passion for mentoring is still there. I think once you've got the bug, you can't escape it.
Yeah,
anymore,
and
right?
it shows. It absolutely shows in all our conversations. You're also a board member of the International Mentoring Association, which I'm looking forward to hearing as well, because you're looking at mentoring through the lens of that global platform. So we're going to have a fascinating conversation.
Yes, we always do.
First, you said something that piqued my interest a few hours ago. You said that mentoring had been really critical in the early parts of your life, that you wouldn't be who you are today without mentors. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So I think, as is the case oftentimes when you're first starting out and having a mentor, you don't necessarily know that they're your mentors in that informal kind of setting. Yeah. And until somebody explains to you around what mentoring actually is, and you start to connect the dots, you're kind of like, oh yeah, those people really made a big difference in my life.
Yes.
When I was a teenager, I really didn't fit in. I was dyslexic at school, and I didn't fit into the kind of the normal sort of stereotype of, what a great student looked like. And I found that really challenging and really difficult. And I had some teachers at school that saw the potential in me in music, and they really encouraged me and pushed me to go down the route of exploring my music. And that actually gave me a whole new lease of life on life. And that was the first experience that I had of mentoring. And then I left school, went straight into uni, left home, and, went to a completely different part of the state to go study. And then I started to meet other mentors that started to take me under their wing and guide me through the profession that I was going into at the time, which was sound engineering and tour management and music.
Right.
And they really kind of, challenged appropriately and guided and asked me powerful questions around, hey, is this the route you want to go? Is this the route you want to go? They would share stories about what they'd experienced in the actual industry and so on. And I was able to very quickly navigate that industry and choose the pathways that I wanted to go down as a result. It wasn't until starting Out of Mentoring and going down the route of actually learning what formal mentoring was and what the definition of mentoring was and what good mentoring looked like, that I was able to then reflect back and say, hey, these people were really pivotal in my lives. The interesting thing was that I went back to them after that and said, you had a really important impact on my life. And they would downplay it. They would say, well, really? Like, it was just a conversation. It wasn't really that much. It wasn't a big deal. And I was like, no, it was a really big deal for me. That one question, that one thing that you said just set me on a completely different pathway. And it opened up a whole world of possibilities for me just because you said that one thing. And it's an amazing factor of mentoring that I've come to love and really learn about and understand. And I think people, they are going through their own journey of mentoring, and the formal mentoring piece is why I've got the bug, is it really starts to formalize some of that, and people really do understand the pivotal nature of some of their their interactions with informal mentors over the years, where I often in my time have asked people, have you had a mentor? And they'll often say no. And then when you start to unpack what a mentor actually is, they turn around and say, well, actually, yes, I have. I've had many.
I've had many mentoring conversations that were powerful, but at the time, you don't necessarily realize or call that person a mentor.
Exactly. Yeah. So mentoring has had a really, really impactful, a piece in my life. It's been a very important piece of my journey.
Yeah. And it has led you to your passion about mentoring and founding Art of Mentoring. Tell us a little bit about that. What led you to want to take mentoring to a platform in the first place?
So I was in the music industry at the time, touring around the world with, Sony Music and some amazing artists. But I was starting to think about, starting a family and getting a bit more of a structured process in my life around my career and so on. And I was having a back porch conversation with my mother, of all people, Alex Richardson, who is a really a big pioneer in the space of mentoring here in Australia and coaching. Both my parents were into executive coaching when it was kind of bring out the cross and garlic voodoo.
I remember that time.
Yes. And
I was one of those as well.
Yeah.
It was like, what is coaching?
Exactly. Like, what is this, this fluffy thing that you're speaking of? Yeah. So both my parents were in executive coaching, and my mother was running mentoring programs. And one of the things that she was doing was traveling around Australia, training up mentors and mentees. And she was finding it was very difficult to do that at scale. And they were trying to go to webinar format, but finding that was a really difficult way to transfer the skills of mentoring because it's very conversational. So she said, we were having a back porch conversation. I was in the music industry thinking about what my next career move was. And she said, we're having a lot of trouble with, we've got a consulting business. We're thinking of eventually winding that up. There's no one to hand it on to, and I said, well, have you thought about productizing what you do? She said, well, one thing that I have thought about productizing is the mentor-mentee training. So we started there. We recorded live videos of mentors and mentees in conversation, showcasing what effective mentoring actually looks like. Turn that into training. And I think that training's been done by hundreds of thousands of people globally now. And it was that was the catalyst that started it. We then went out to the market. The market was very, I guess, as you said, it was avant-garde at the time. It was not super well educated in the space of mentoring. So we went out and started selling the mentor-mentee training and started asking our customers, what else do you need? And they said, well, we want to run mentoring programs like your mother does. So we built digital templates. And then eventually we got to scales of programs where it really needed software. So we started reselling some software and eventually decided it was better to build our own. And we built our own. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Fast forward how many years before you exited that business?
It was about 10 years before we sold it. And then another year or so after that before I actually formally exited the day-to-day operations of that company.
But you have kept the bug of mentoring, tech, HR, organizational culture. Tell us a little bit about what you've done since then and what's the golden thread between all those engagements.
I mean, first and foremost, I've taken on a number of mentees myself, and I really enjoy that process. I actually find, and something I learned over the years of running Art of Mentoring is often the mentor gets more than the mentee does. And they don't realize that's going to be the case until they've been through the process. So for me, mentoring has stayed in that space that way. I joined the International Mentoring Association board because I'm really passionate about continuing the research and looking into actually what does good mentoring look like, and how do we forward the research so that people have got access to that research around the different nuanced types of programs that they run, the ways that different programs are run with the different styles of matching and all of that kind of stuff, and what is the actual science behind it. It's not we used to say that it's not rocket science, but there's definitely an art to doing mentoring well. So that's kind of the thread that's kind of kept in there. And I've also, as a result of being so deep in HR technology, I've kept up that sort of bug as well. So after exiting Art of Mentoring, I've consulted with a number of different HR technology companies and looking at product and go-to-market and all of that kind of stuff. So that's really where the bug has stayed across the time.
And then we met at a conference.
We did
last year, and it was immediate I won't say love at first sight because that's not appropriate, but definitely professional love or professional connection
Chemistry,
at
yeah.
first sight. Chemistry, great,
Yeah.
great, better word. And we're so excited that you have joined the advisory board of MentorKey, and you're doing quite a lot of work with us at the moment to help MentorKey scale its impact, essentially. So thank you for the partnership. That means a lot.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm very excited as well because we share the vision of mentoring done well, and when that's done well, the impact that can have on the individual, but also the organization. So it's very aligned with my mission and my purpose around that piece of actually ensuring that mentoring is done well and filling that gap, because a lot of people are either in consulting world and they're very focused on just the training and the workshops and that kind of thing, and it's not scalable, or they're very focused on the technology. And it's all about scale at all costs. So it's how do you bridge that gap and find a middle ground between the two of those? And I feel like we're very aligned on that.
Totally. Impact and scale.
Yes.
That's what we're looking to achieve.
That's it.
For
2 words.
So that it has a ripple effect, right? As you say, mentors get so much out of it, and we know it's life-changing for mentees.
Absolutely.
How can we scale that impact so that everyone benefits in society and people in general can grow?
Yes.
That's very much where we align. Alex, tell me, let's talk about mentoring technology platforms. Obviously, platforms are now quite mainstream.
Yes.
To run mentoring programs, organizations have integrated or sort of understood this. But what's the next frontier? What's the next stage? What does the future of mentoring tech look like?
I love that question. You know, I think for the last 10 years, there's been a real focus of trying to get people off spreadsheets and into software. And that's really great because you can do that at scale. You can take into account a lot of the criteria of the matching, and you can tailor it, and you can do it at scale in a way where you're not spending. I mean, I've met people that would have dining tables super long with, pieces of paper out, and they're trying to match people up this way, and it takes them weeks and weeks and weeks to do hundreds of matches
that are not even very effective.
No. And they get to the end of their list and they're saying, no, I need that mentor for this mentee and this person for that person and so on. And it gets really difficult. So, that frontier, I think, has happened. And now it's table stakes almost to have the matching algorithms and the software. What I'm very excited about for the future in technology is how do we now shift the focus from the administrator being able to do things at scale, but now to the mentor and the mentee, and how do we impact the conversation? How do we improve that level of quality of conversation? And I think there's a number of ways that that's going to happen. It's through, we started in training in the Art of Mentoring days, but I'm seeing a lot, and MentorKey has done this really beautifully around how do we enable activities that people can do together and not just stay in the realm of just mentoring. Like, how do we branch out into leadership and into networking, into other different like core areas or skills of leadership and other areas of your career that the mentoring can affect? And how do we equip the mentor when they don't feel as maybe skilled in that particular area to actually help the mentee and guide them through that? So that's a really powerful piece. I'm really excited about AI and where that's going and the way that it can augment the conversation. I'm a firm believer that AI will probably never, and I say probably because I'm never going to say never with AI. It's amazing how quickly things are progressing, but I don't think it will ever replace the high quality coach or the high quality mentor,
or at least that human connection that's required to generate insight.
Exactly. That and the ability to thread together stories and powerful questions and read the mentee's emotional body language and so on and so forth, and build that rapport and trust. There's just going to be a lack thereof in that area. Definitely the commoditized mentoring and coaching, beware, but the high quality stuff I think is never going to be replaced, but definitely augmented. So where there's a co-pilot sitting beside the mentor or beside the mentee that's really guiding them through how do you actually do this? How do you navigate this conversation and get the most out of it? And it's not about speed necessarily, it's about quality of conversation. And I'm really excited about that into the future too.
Yeah, brilliant. I absolutely concur with this. I really feel very strongly that AI will not coach or mentor as effectively as a human, but it can actually enhance the effectiveness of human mentoring and coaching. Yeah. And
if I may, just one thing I'd add is just the measurement of the quality as well. I think that there's been a real rush, especially in the coaching world, towards deploying thousands and thousands of coaches to organizations. But there's been not a lot of quality control or measurement around the impact of that. And I think we're starting to see some technology that's coming into place that's starting to work out how effective actually is that. And another founder I was speaking to who's building some technology around this space the other day, he was talking about how coaching, when it's not done well, it can still feel good because it's almost like you're going for a massage and you've been like, if they don't know what they're doing, at least you lay down with your face down for an hour, which how often do you get in your day to do that, right? Versus if you go to a sports, physiotherapist or masseuse who really knows how to do proper remedial massage, it might take time, but they'll actually deal with some of the underlying issues and get you some real progress.
And it might feel uncomfortable on the moment. Like really good mentoring can feel quite uncomfortable on the moment, but have deeper impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think measurement will be a really interesting thing as well around technology and the ability to take that data and then use that for the augmentation to be able to real-time assess the actual conversation quality, and then to be able to work out how do we get this back on track? How do we actually veer it back towards a certain point?
An impactful conversation.
Yeah, right. And conversation at the end of the day is actually the core essence of how we do business. Yeah. It's the culmination of these thousands of people coming together and communicating. That's the output of what an organization is. So it would make sense that if we build that skill as a general rule, that the organizational health will generally improve as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I love what you're saying, that actually we can use AI to power and enhance a very unique human skill, which is that connection and that conversation.
Absolutely.
Tell us about the future of mentoring with that in mind.
Yeah, I think the future of mentoring, it really kind of segues nicely into that from what we've just spoken about. It's really about the quality of the conversations can start to improve as technology providers, but also, organizations start to come to terms with the fact that we've tried this hard and fast stuff. And there's probably going to be a few years of that with AI and everything that's going on in the technology world. But as the dust starts to settle and we start to assess the impact of that there's this really important piece that shines through, and that is human connection and quality of conversation. So I think the future of mentoring is really about about more mentors and coaches as well, but mentors in particular. How do they get the training and the resources and the assistance from technology and from quality resources around how do we actually improve the conversation? And what I'm hopeful for and quite bullish about is that we'll start to see more quality mentors quickly getting to that point because of that, as opposed to they kind of had to feel their way through, read a number of books, get a whole lot of practice hours in to get to that point. Now you can actually start to augment that and speed up that learning curve and help it stick because you're actually assessing the behaviors and the conversation types as you go.
Brilliant. That's really an inspiring, ambitious goal for technology to deliver this. Yeah, brilliant. What does that mean for organizations who are, a lot of program managers or program mentoring program leaders are listening to us, what do they need to take away from that learning when you think about implementing mentoring within an organization?
Yeah, I think the answer is it depends on the way you look at it. Do you look at it at the program level or the organizational level strategically? If we look at it at the program level, it's how do you do mentoring more impactfully at scale, but also just impactfully in general, and get those quality conversations going. Reframe that it's a tick the box exercise of just like, let's create some engagement. People are asking, it's coming up in our engagement surveys and so on, and people are asking for it, to actually, when this is done really powerfully and really well, that this is actually making a huge difference on not just the people in our organization, but the bottom line itself. And we're actually seeing metrics shift. And so, that shift of just a tick the box exercise to actually, how do I do this effectively and do this well, is the program level piece. But I think what I'd love to see start to shift as well is people starting to see this as a cultural, like, strategic lever and almost like a superpower, right? Like, it's this opportunity to cascade learning, information, and culture from the top level down. If we think about the Lencioni's the advantage model, for example, and we're looking at how do we actually build that cultural piece and the behaviors and all of that sort of conversational tone, terminology, and so on around the culture. How do we then cascade that into the organization? How do we then have that fold its way down from leadership down into the rungs of the organization itself? And I think that's where the potential is for somebody that really thinks, as an organization, thinks of this as a strategic opportunity to look at, we can run multiple programs, but they're all pointing to the same North Star. And we have this cultural lever that we can leverage here to actually ensure that what the leadership team are talking about and the impact that they're wanting to make is actually making its way down, as opposed to we're just talking about it. We've had a really great session, workshop over it, and now it goes nowhere.
So you and I can see the potential of mentoring having a real impact on organizational culture and enhancing leadership capability and enhancing engagement from junior employees, etc. But what I find is that often there's a pressure and a push on HR to just get a mentoring program over the line, because, as you said, it's just been asked in the engagement survey, and so we just need to get it done. How do we support those, HR experts to sell within the organization that dream of, let's do mentoring well because it will add value?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, what are the strategic needs of the business, but it's also having the conversation at the level that the leaders will really fully understand it, rather than just a tick the box exercise. And what I mean by that is, one of the most important things that you hear time and time again is the pipeline of leaders coming through, right? And these are skills. The mentoring conversation builds skills in people to have emotional intelligence, have the ability to ask powerful questions, to lead people through guiding and so on, as opposed to telling them how to do things. It's those skills that managers and leaders really, really need that are lacking.
More than ever.
Yeah. And if you talk to large organizations at the top end, leaders across the board, but in particular the CHROs, are talking about how we've got an issue of, we've got a vacuum of people who don't have the 101s in terms of leadership and management. They can't work on the business and in the business at the same time. They can't see around the corners. These are the kind of issues that they're facing. Those mentoring conversations actually break down a lot of those barriers and help them actually do a lot of that stuff. So it's about reframing mentoring from just a tick the box exercise. And yes, okay, you want it, that's fine. But to actually saying, this is actually building our future pipeline of leaders. It's having an impact on teams around the mentee who it's affecting. We're seeing improvements in engagement, in retention, in all of these areas as well. So therefore, this isn't just, a tick the box exercise and something that one day you can cut off later. It's actually a strategic piece of your puzzle when it comes to culture and leadership and the future of leaders.
And it's much more than, let's just do this because we know employees want it. It's actually, well, let's do it because it also equips our mentors who are the leaders with the skills that we need for them to step up and lead the organization.
And at the end of the day, it's what defines your organization as being competitive and being a leader in the space. You know, you can see the ones that really take the mentoring seriously. They take other parts of the culture very seriously as well, but it makes a huge difference to the overall outcome for their people and the performance of their people as well.
I often talk about the fact that there's a big important work to be done before when you start rolling out mentoring within an organization. The way you start doing it, the way you run your initial pilot will set the tone. It will define whether your mentors want to come back because the mentees are committed. It will define between mentees just signing up because it sounds fun and mentees signing up because they really have an objective for it. So setting the right culture tone within the organization with your first pilots is critical. How do we do this well?
I think it's about being very clear about what the outcomes that you want from the program are and designing the program around that. And that's good programmatic design. So the first place to look at is, you know, what are our overall objectives and how do we align the program and customize the program to that? It's about how you communicate it to people as well. But it's also about not going for quantity at first. It's going for quality at first. So it's around how do I get the biggest impact for a small cohort, because your mentees will come back as mentors. The mentors will come back. If you burn those bridges, they don't come back again. You know, and mentoring is it only functions well when it's an opt-in. When you force people to go through it, it doesn't work. So you really want people to be spreading the word, talking about how impactful it was and how important it was to them, like I did earlier in the podcast about how impactful my mentors were on me. You want those kind of stories and those kind of advocates within your program to spread the word, and it will spread organically that way throughout the organization.
So I'm thinking a lot of our listeners are absolutely bought into what we're saying, but they come back to the same problem of, okay, I see the potential for mentoring. I see what great mentoring can look like for our organization. But how do I do it? Because when I launch my pilot, how do I control the quality of the conversations that occur? How do I shift the mindset from the mentees thinking that they can just show up and the mentors will tell them everything, and the mentors feeling they have to justify their presence by talking about their own career? How can a program lead ensure that those conversations are taking place in the right way?
Absolutely. And I've got a funny analogy that I often use around the first meetings between mentors and mentees, which is that it's that salsa dancer, someone who's actually had the training, and somebody that's never danced salsa before trying to dance salsa together, and somebody stepping on each other's toes. And it's like, it's all a bit awkward. And even worse if neither of them have done the salsa dancing before, right? So that equipping your mentors and mentees with some resources, activities, training, education around how to navigate that relationship well is what is like core to the importance of the program running well. Absolutely. In fact, we know from Professor David Clutterbuck that if you don't train mentors and mentees, either of them, you generally get a 1 in 3 success rate. So it's often 2 in 3 fail. If you train just the mentor, that success rate tends to double. And if you then train both the mentor and the mentee, you can get above 90% satisfaction rates of the mentors and mentees being matched. So there's empirical evidence to show that actually the training and the supporting of the mentors and the mentees in that conversation is actually what makes it successful. It's not about the perfect match. It's not about the organization really getting behind it. It's actually about how do you support the mentors and the mentees. So then from a HR person's perspective, or anyone running the program for that matter, in fact, one thing I will say is HR could possibly start to think about how do we enable mentoring across the organization for the organization to run multiple programs versus how do we run all the programs ourselves. So one thing that I've seen work really well is when HR say, this is our framework that we believe in. We've curated it for you. We've found the resources for the mentors and the mentees, and this is what's going to work. Now, managers out there, if you see an opportunity for mentoring, and this is where mentoring really works well, just to educate you on that, you can now run that using the frameworks that we can now equip you with. So rather than it having to be really central to the HR function, sometimes it can be decentralized in a way that's really powerful in that way too. So I think, HR's job is to curate the best resources possible to enable the mentor and the mentee to have the best conversation possible. And so there are technologies like MentorKey out there that are doing that are providing activities and resources, training guides, and so on for the mentors and the mentees to go through that. Now, my thinking has semi-shifted as well from just static training up front. Here's an hour to an hour and a half of learning and off you go. You should be great at this now, to actually it's more about, let's get you some really quality resources and quality activities to do between mentor and mentee in the moment. Because actually what you're doing is you're saying, right, let's curate it on the basis of you're wanting to talk about leadership today, or building your network, or your career aspirations. What are some activities that we can do together, and how can we make this a dance where we both know the steps and we can, really be in lockstep in that way from the get-go. And I think that static training that I've seen in the past work really well can be far better when you're actually providing some in the moment resources as well.
Which is exactly the bet that MentorKey has taken.
Yes.
Is to actually equip with the keys to equip mentors and mentees with the framework to have the impactful, powerful conversation on hundreds of different topics. Now, the last frontier, though, is when the mentors think that they don't need training and the mentees think, I've registered to a mentoring program. You're telling me I have to do training for it? No, my mentor will tell me everything. So this is like, how do we make it compelling for mentors and mentees to understand that they actually have to embrace that framework, and that it takes a little bit of learning and stepping on each other's toes. Yeah,
and time. I think, something that people often forget, and it's not taught to mentors or mentees oftentimes, is that your goals shift and change. Yes. So, you might start with what we call surface goals, and with some very clear strategic understandings of what you want to achieve in the first 2 to 3 months. But it's totally okay for that to shift and change and deepen over time as you build rapport, as you start to tick off some of the goals that you set out with, and so on and so forth. So I think, for the most part, to kind of get both the mentor and mentee in lockstep, help mentors that think they know what they're doing, but maybe they don't, or maybe they could improve their skills. Mentees who are feeling like, I don't know how to start this, or, I had a meeting, but nothing really happened. It felt like a coffee catch up. It was nice, but not really anything good. I think it's really, again, coming back to those activities of how do we actually equip you with some resources to work through those moments, and to give you some scaffolding, some guardrails from within to operate. It's also through storytelling and sharing. Yeah. So I think it's about hearing other mentors and other mentees' stories. What have they actually achieved? What have they experienced? Yeah. I mentioned earlier that mentors often get more from the relationship than the mentee does, but they don't realize that they're going to until they've actually had that aha moment, right? So mentors sharing their stories about how they got a lot from it. I'll never forget, we were running I've designed a women's program in construction, and in the resources sector, and the mentors were mostly male because most of the leaders were male. It was a male-dominated industry, right? And we were running a mentoring program for women in the industry to try and get more women into leadership. But you needed the mentors to be the men, because we actually needed the leaders to mentor and help to buy in. We had one mentor and several mentors, but one in particular that came back and said, look, you've just completely changed the game for me. I've been through diversity program workshops. I've had all the stats thrown at me. I've had conversations with diversity people in my own organization. It wasn't until I sat on the other side of a table listening to my mentees' stories that I decided in that moment I was going to become a champion of change. Yeah. And it was the stories that moved me. Yes. It was the situation of that person actually going through what I'd heard about and hearing the lived experience of that person and the realities of that person, that I realized we do have glass ceilings. We do have some systemic issues internally that are limiting some of our female staff to get to that leadership level, and we need to combat that. So the power of story cannot be underestimated in that sense.
And it was an example about women in leadership, but we hear those types of stories time and time again with mentors actually developing the empathy for someone who is different to them, and that in turn actually having an impact on their inclusive leadership capability, because they start to understand the circumstances, the thinking style, the mindset of people who are fundamentally different to them. Yeah. And that actually broadens their leadership capabilities.
Look, I picked that story because it was so powerful, but really what it's an example of is perspective shift. Exactly. And that what that leads to is emotional intelligence, which leads to a good leader who can create psychological safety. Yes. And all of a sudden, you've now unlocked the real capability of your team as a result of that. And this is where we come full circle to what we were talking about earlier of this is your cultural secret weapon or lever, because you're now equipping the future of your leaders, not just to have the one-on-one leadership and management skills, but to come up with emotional intelligence and the ability to create psychological safety. Like, wow, we've actually got the ability to do something really special here.
No other training will deliver that, right?
No, it's lived experience and stories and human interactions that creates that. And that's where, that's the piece of what AI and technology can't necessarily replace, is that piece of that lived experience, that opportunity to connect with another human on the other side of the table, start to empathize with their situation and to understand their situation, and to start to shift your own perspectives and your own operating models underneath by the very, very virtue of you're hearing somebody looking at the same point from a different viewpoint.
Absolutely. And what powerful story if actually technology and AI can enable that.
Yes.
And I think what I'm hearing from you is for our HR partners who are looking to influence that mental shift in the organization, or those unlocking those leadership capabilities, it's really about starting small and a pilot of mentoring where they enable that learning for their mentors and their mentees, provide that framework, instill that framework so that the right conversations occur, so that the impact occurs and it has that ripple effect on their
and the right stories
culture.
start to create that ripple effect outwards because the mentors and mentees have been so impacted by that initial program. Also that the program managers who maybe are doing it for the first time or are trying to uplift the way that they do it are learning from their experience of running the program. A pilot is exactly that. It's a pilot. It's an opportunity to test something within a space.
And I really think one thing you said before, which was very powerful, which is if your mentors or mentees think that they don't need training and that's your sort of your roadblock in launching powerful mentoring because your participants don't really show interest in your training, then expose them to people who have had those transformational mentoring experience, because that will impact the mentor thinking, maybe I should think about this differently. Maybe I need more of that.
Yes.
So using previously successful mentors and mentees to come and talk to your participants to really light that insight that mentoring can be done differently, and they need that support to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, like the fact that I've caught the mentoring bug is not unique. There's a lot of people that catch it once they really experience it, once it's real, So it's really about how do you facilitate people to catch that bug. And that's really through the stories and the opportunities of hearing from others as to why they caught it.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Alex. Thank you so much. We've covered so much. I hope that this was as enjoyable for our audience as it was for me to listen to you distill all these insights and me feeling, yes, I completely agree with all of this.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and the great questions.
We're getting to our fast 5 questions. Are you ready?
Yes. Can I get my notes up?
You can. Cool. You absolutely can. The biggest myth about mentoring is?
Yeah, that you can just match them and that they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
We've spoken about that a lot today.
Yeah.
You know, just making sure that they're equipped with the resources and the knowledge to do the best that they can in that moment.
Yeah. What is the key capability or skill set that leaders will gain out of mentoring that they couldn't get from any other training?
Yeah, again, emotional intelligence. You know, it's that opportunity to learn new perspectives and to challenge your own operating model internally around that.
Yeah, emotional intelligence. I completely, and that empathy piece.
Yes,
yeah, I think that's crucial. What's a book, an article, a learning, a podcast that has recently impacted you and that you think all leaders should listen to or watch?
Yeah, it's
or
not
read?
super recent, but I'd call out The Mentor's Guide by Lois Zachary and Lisa Fain.
Yes,
it's just such a great mentoring handbook that people can use. So we've talked about the resources that are out there. I'd look at that one as a really good book.
Yeah, brilliant. What is the I guess your one advice to organizations to implement mentoring well?
I think about the program design and the outcomes that you're wanting to get from it, the objectives of your program, and start there. And then look to see for the resources, the research, and so on how to do it well. That's the best starting point that you can have.
Right. And the future of leadership is?
Yeah. It's leaders that can work on and in the business, that can see around the corner, but also have the emotional intelligence and the ability to lead teams that can feel psychologically safe.
Yeah, brilliant. Well said. Thank you so much, Alex. I hope to see you again on the podcast. We'll have so much more to talk about.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Mentoring Unlocked. This podcast is powered by MentorKey, the platform designed to make mentoring impactful. If this episode unlocked inspiration within you, please follow, share, or leave us a review.